We need to talk about oil filters. I've done some digging here recently, and I did not find what I expected to find. There's some good options out there for oil filters, and there's some not good options, and I'm willing to bet it's not what you would think. If you've seen any of my Harley Davidson oil change or fluid service videos, then you've seen me use this filter. This is the Fram PH6065B. I've had a few viewers leave comments recommending that I do some oil filter research before I install another Fram oil filter on a Harley Davidson. I didn't think this was the best oil filter that money could buy. That's not why I used it in my videos. I used it because it's available everywhere. Most auto parts stores have it, and you can find it at Walmart. Servicing our bikes doesn't have to be difficult, and it shouldn't be expensive. The tools, fluids, and oil filters I use in my videos are available to anyone willing to make a trip to town. This is not a sponsored video. We're going to look inside these filters and let them speak for themselves. And before this video is over, I'm going to share a piece of advice that I think will change your life, whether you own a Harley Davidson or not. But first I want to read some of the comments that inspired me to do the research and make this video. Russ Pinochle commented, "Never use Fram oil filters. They are the worst!" Exclamation point. Hawaii Bike Kahuna commented, "The only thing I disagree with is the use of a Fram oil filter. The worst there is. Don't use synthetic oil and then skimp on the oil filter." Randy Odom wrote in to say, "Do not use Fram oil filters. They do not warranty their oil filters." I have to admit, Randy, you stumped me on that one. I had no idea whether Fram warranted their oil filters or not. But I looked on their website, and they sure enough do warranty their oil filters for 1 year from the time of installation. But I have to admit, my first thought when I read the comment was, I wonder if Kleenex warranties their tissues. You blow your nose in them, and then you throw them away. I hope nobody's running a cartridge oil filter for more than a year. Run it for a year or a few thousand miles, and then throw it away. Con Coast 7.3 writes, "A Fram is the absolute worst filter made for any engine. They cut corners and use garbage materials inside." Stacy Baldwin wrote, "Fram is the absolute worst filter you can use. For my bike, I use the Harley Chrome filter." Mark Blevins wrote, "One thing, do some research on oil filters. Fram filters are junk." I appreciate that recommendation, Mark. I've done a little research. I'm not going to talk right now about where these filters are being made and who's making them. I'll be posting a video in about a week that looks at that and what that might mean for the future of American manufacturing. Right now I'm going to bring the camera down here so we can take a close look at what's hiding inside these cans. Before we look under the hood of these two oil filters, let's hop in the DeLorean and time travel 25 years into the past and take a look inside the oil filter that we could have picked up at the Harley dealership back in 1996. Harley Davidson called this the classic oil filter, and the part number for this filter with chrome finish was 63796-77T. When I opened this filter up, I was impressed. I wasn't really surprised because attention to detail, high quality materials, and expert fit and finish is what I expected to find inside a product made by a brand like Harley Davidson that relies so heavily on the reputation of their brand name. That being said, it really was a well-made filter. The design is simple and effective, the materials are appropriate and high quality, and the fit and finish is nearly perfect. If I had been an assembly line worker involved in the production of this particular filter back in 1996, I would have been proud to open it up for Willie G. Davidson to inspect and judge the quality of the workmanship I was producing for the company his grandfather founded in 1903. Starting with the base plate, we have the letters HD
indicating that we're looking at an OEM filter. The outer gasket seals the filter housing to the engine, and we have 4 inlet holes to let dirty oil into the filter housing, and this threaded hole in the center is the outlet where the filtered oil leaves the filter housing after passing through the filter media. On the back side, we have the inner gasket that seals the cartridge to the base plate. The cartridge itself consists of 2 metal end caps with pleated fiber filter media glued in place into the end caps at each end. The pleats are crisp and evenly spaced. The pleat seam where the 2 ends of the media are connected is so well done that it's basically invisible. The glue securing the media to the end caps is adequate but discreet. The back end cap has an integrated pressure release valve which is intended to open to allow dirty oil to pass freely back into the engine in the event the filter media becomes completely blocked. Notice that on this filter, the pressure release valve consists of a small metal disc against a metal spring inside a small metal housing that has been spot welded to the metal base plate. The final component is a high temper coiled steel spring that maintains pressure against the seal between the base plate and the cartridge by pushing against the outer cover of the filter housing. Altogether, in my opinion, this filter is a work of art. Next up, I'm in the unfortunate position of showing you what you get if you go into the dealership today and purchase an oil filter. The part number has remained the same, with the exception of the last letter, which has changed from an A to a T. Unfortunately, apart from the part number and the fact that they both screw onto a Harley engine, these 2 filters have almost nothing in common. Starting with the base plate, we have the bar and shield logo in place of the letters HD that we saw on the old filter, and for some reason we've got red paint on almost all the new oil filters. That may be intended to represent the blood, sweat, and tears of the modern American assembly line worker, but you'd have to ask Harley about that. Instead of 4 inlet holes, we have 8, because twice as many must be twice as gooder. On the back, we have the gasket to seal the base plate to the cartridge, although this time the gasket is considerably lighter duty than on the previous filter. It feels more like saran wrap than a rubber gasket. On the cartridge itself, the pleats are almost completely random in terms of the spacing. In this section we have a pretty tight cluster of pleats with almost no space in between them, and then over here we've got a large amount of space in between the pleats. The glue can be seen all over the pleats across the whole filter. It's good they used lots of glue, but if they could have kept it in the end caps, that probably would have been preferable. The seam where the media ends are joined is very visible and has visible glue leaking out of the surface. As far as the pressure release valve, on this filter, it's just a little black plastic plunger, and the coil spring has been replaced with a sheet of galvanized steel stamped into a leaf that I guess is supposed to push against the housing in the same way that a coil spring might. Would it filter oil? You bet. Is it a work of art? Not in my opinion. If, as you have just seen, the older Harley filter is so obviously superior to the new one, why, you might ask, would anyone buy the new one when they could get the old one instead? The answer, as you might already have guessed, is that you can't get the old one anywhere for any price. Harley discontinued it over 20 years ago, in favor of the more profitable new design. Now imagine if there really was a time machine, a way to go back to 1996 and buy a whole shopping cart full of the old filters for a little more than half the cost of the current OEM filter. I get to show you that there is a way. There is a time machine, and it's been right in front of our face the whole time. Let's look inside the Fram and see if we find anything familiar about what's inside. Let's start with the base plate. We've got 6 inlet holes instead of 4 or 8. And the gasket has an extra lip of rubber that the Harley filters don't have. That's an anti-drain back valve. What that does is, when the oil goes into the filter from the engine, it can't flow back when you shut the engine off. That might be a good thing if, for instance, you didn't want to sump your oil down into your crankcase and have it puke all over your boots when you've let your bike sit for a month without starting it. Looking at the cartridge, we're going to see some things that look strangely familiar. One of those things is nice, even pleats without glue all over them. Sufficient glue in both ends of the base plates, and a familiar looking pressure bypass valve. That's a metal disc with a metal spring and a metal housing spot welded to the metal base plate. This thing looks familiar too. This is a tempered steel coil spring, just like we saw in the old Harley filter. Is it junk? Is it poor quality? Will it damage your engine? No. And I would argue that it's as close to a work of art as you're going to find for $12. I promised you a piece of life-changing advice, and I don't make promises lightly, but I do have one small thing I need your help with first. If you look below this video, you should see a small button or icon that looks like this and says Share. Click that button and select the Copy Link option, and then as soon as this video is over, paste that link into a text message and send it to 2 or 3 of your buddies so we can get this information out there. Now I promised you a piece of life-changing information. And if you have a pen and a piece of paper to take notes, here it is. Go do something kind for a stranger. If you think that sounds simple, or obvious, or silly, know that I've never been more sincere about anything in my entire life. It doesn't matter if you're well off, or behind on your bills, the picture of health, or on death's door. The single most powerful thing you can do to immediately improve your life is to go do something kind for a stranger. Hold the door for someone. Invite someone to cut in front of you in traffic. The next time you're in line for your lunch at the drive-thru, when you're paying the cashier, pay for the person behind you also. I'm honored to be able to participate with you in this online community, sharing the knowledge we've acquired about our machines. But more important than that is the fact that we really, truly are all brothers and sisters, and all we ultimately have is each other. If we all come together to go out into the world and be intentional about being kind to each other, we will literally begin to see the world transform before our eyes. And we can reimagine what it means to be human in a single generation. That may sound like a tall order, but your part is simple. Go do something kind for a stranger.